He threatens to take over Harris County elections. We'll discuss this story and more of today's top headlines. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with Brandon Rottinghaus, University of Houston political science professor and co-host of Houston Public Media's Party Politics, about where Texas is headed politically in 2026.
Plus, Sharon Fletcher, executive director of Houston's Freedmen's Town Conservancy, will tell us more about the history behind this historic Houston neighborhood.
And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Justice Department has opened a criminal probe of the Federal Reserve. NPR's Scott Horsley reports that has drawn an unusually strong response from Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
The Federal Reserve says it received grand jury subpoenas late last week about the renovation of the central bank's headquarters building in Washington and Fed Chairman Jerome Powell's testimony about that project before a Senate committee. Powell says those are mere pretext. He says the threat of criminal charges is part of the administration's broader pressure campaign, designed to force the Fed to move more quickly in lowering interest rates. The president is getting pushback, however, from some senators who will vote on Trump's nominee to replace Powell when the chairman's term ends in May. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The administration is tightening restrictions on members of Congress visiting ICE facilities. Lawmakers will now be required to submit requests at least 1 week in advance. We have more from NPR's Elena Moore.
In her memo, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem argued that unannounced visits take ICE officers away from their normal duties. And she argued that visiting lawmakers are creating, quote, circus-like publicity stunts. The memo was made public on Saturday, but it was filed Thursday, just a day after an ICE agent fatally shot a 37-year-old woman in Minneapolis, sparking intense criticism and nationwide protests. And some Democratic lawmakers have already been turned away from visiting ICE facilities. On Saturday, 3 House Democrats said they were denied access to an ICE processing center in Minneapolis. Elena Moore, NPR News.
President Trump says Iran has reached out to negotiate with the United States after Oman, a mediator, dispatched its top diplomat to Tehran for talks. Anti-government protests have been roiling Iran. NPR's Aya Batrawi has the latest.
Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One that the U.S. could meet with Iranian officials and that a meeting is being set up. But he cautioned that the military is also looking at, quote, some very strong options. Trump said if Iran attacks U.S. assets in the Mideast, they will be met with a very powerful force. Iranian authorities have cut off internet across the country for 4 days now in a bid to stifle protests that they say are being stoked by, quote, terrorists. Rights groups estimate that hundreds of protesters have been killed in the demonstrations that began December 28th. Iran says security personnel have also been killed. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi repeated the government's position that foreign elements are fueling the violence. The government planned rallies in support of the regime Monday. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
Paramount Skydance is suing Warner Brothers Discovery for more information into its decision to again reject a takeover bid in favor of Netflix's, even though Paramount offered more money. CBS's parent company also says it will nominate directors to the Warner Brothers board to propel the deal. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. Authorities reminding parents about the dangers of the internet after a man was arrested for allegedly attempting to meet up with a teenage girl for sex. Toby Woods was taken into custody without incident, according to Baytown police. Police say Woods was communicating with who he thought was a 16-year-old girl. KHOU reports Woods is a sex offender stemming from a previous incident. Baytown police are reminding parents to have open conversations about online safety with their kids, in addition to monitoring their social media. Any suspicious activity should be reported to authorities. A violent Sunday for Houston police, officers forced to shoot and kill 2 men in separate incidents. Early Sunday morning on Tidwell Road in northeast Houston, officers were attempting to arrest a man during a traffic stop when he became combative, resulting in one officer shooting the man. Meanwhile, Sunday afternoon, another officer-involved shooting took place on Wayne Street in northeast Houston. Houston Police Assistant Chief James Skelton says officers were responding to a call of a suspicious man with a gun.
As the officers were continuing to give him verbal commands to drop his weapon, the suspect raised his weapon, and our officers, unfortunately, had to discharge their weapon.
Both shootings remain under investigation. In sports, it's a first, a Monday night playoff game featuring the Houston Texans on the road against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kickoff is tonight at 7:15 p.m. The winner will advance to face the New England Patriots in Boston next weekend. And checking your weather, we've got clouds and sun today, a nice high of 62 degrees. Becoming mostly cloudy overnight with a low of 47. Right now, partly cloudy, 53 degrees on the UH campus. Get the whole story. For more news and information, go to houstonpublicmedia.org. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, supporting books, radio, podcasts, film, television, theater, and more to bridge science and the humanities. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's... Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And I'm back with you. Did you miss me, Celeste?
I did, but it was great to have Doug Miller here with us, and we had a great week last week. Heavy news week.
Yes, very much so. I kind of miss it when big stories happen and I'm not here. I kind of I'm sure my cats are done hearing me talk about it because I'm so used to talking to all of you about these topics. And when there's no one to talk to, I just talk to my cats about them. Yeah. Frank is doing well. We'll be back with us very soon. So we're waiting for his return too. But you have Celeste and I today. And we have you with us. Remember, you can join the conversation. As you just heard Jim say in the opening, you can call us. You can watch us on YouTube. You can email us. So many options, so many ways to be part of the show, and so much going on. And this isn't the part where we usually ask Frank to tell us about the weather.
But you know what we're going to do? This morning, thousands, actually 25,000 runners woke up this morning feeling the feeling of achievement.
I thought you were going to say feeling sore.
And possibly a little pain, yes, from running the Houston Chevron Marathon. This is obviously a local tradition, but it's a big international running event. And Houston's very own Eric Berger with Space City Weather ran the marathon, and he joins us now. Eric, welcome to Hello Houston, and congratulations.
Are you there with us, Eric?
Well,
yeah.
There you are.
Yes, we can hear you now.
I was just gonna say I'm on the side that woke up feeling sore this morning.
I would guess anyone that did it probably, even no matter how well trained you are, it is an endurance, isn't it?
It is. It is, man. Those last 6 miles are always just a killer.
Oh, yeah. Marathon Sunday was a chilly Sunday, but it was a dry start. So how did the weather compare to last year's past, Eric?
So, honestly, the conditions yesterday were ideal for long-distance running. It was cold. There was no really strong wind at all. The humidity was low. There was no precipitation. It doesn't get any better than this. And now last year was quite cold, a little bit colder even, but the big difference is it was super windy last year. Mm-hmm. So, we're talking about gusts above 30 miles per hour. And so it was quite a bit more uncomfortable. But I've been running the marathon for a little more than a decade now, and this was certainly the nicest weather I can remember. just because of all the reasons I cited.
That's funny you say that, because it would take me a decade to run one marathon. So you've been running it for a decade.
I've got to tell you, Eric, as a runner myself, I understand that the rain being a real issue, but you talk about the wind, and I don't think people understand when it's not just wind, but when it's chilly, it can really affect your time.
Yeah, it can definitely affect your time, and it really cools you down quickly, like especially when you're running into the wind, and it just kind of saps your energy. So the wind is never pleasant. Although if you get a strong wind to your tail, it's kind of nice running in. The thing I really don't like about running weather was when it gets humid and when the dew points are above 60 or 65%, you get a high relative humidity, and that's almost impossible, I find, to run long distances in.
Well, I don't know if we're bearing the lead here, and I don't know how you pay attention to it, but is it more important where you place or simply getting through it?
Well, for me, I mean, it's simply getting through it. It's a nice achievement. It helps me feel a little young, even though I'm not particularly young anymore. So, I mean, I never run fast, although I did do a personal record yesterday just because I had a good training season, and the weather, I say, was ideal for running.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank
you. And, Houston is actually known for being a great place to PR, but it's also known for, as a qualifying race. Do you think yesterday's, weather is going to impact people signing up for Houston next year as we look to 2027?
I do, and I have to say the marathon has been growing. They've been at capacity for a number of years, and they actually increased it this year to where there are almost 30,000 people running the full and half marathons, and they still were sold out a couple of months ago. So, anyone who's interested in trying this out, and you really can do this. I'm not an athlete by any stretch of the imagination, but if you put in the time and effort, you can do it. Now is the time to sign up because, by this fall, they will have closed probably all their entries. But also, as you say, for the elite athletes, they have a good field every year, and the weather's usually good. And the other factor that's really important for the elite runners is that the course is flat for the most part. And that also really helps with people with good times.
Eric, I do have to say, though, you have to re-examine yourself here. I can't imagine someone who's just run a marathon saying they are not an athlete. You are, and congratulations on your accomplishment.
Well, you're very kind, Ernie. Thank you.
Hey, Eric, now that we have you on the line, how does the rest of the week look?
It looks like January ought to look. We're going to be mostly in the 60s during the daytime, mostly in the 40s at night. And lots of sunshine and dry air. It should be quite lovely. And this is really pretty typical for Houston this time of year.
Eric Berger with Space City Weather. Thank you for the weather update, and congratulations on running another marathon.
Thank you both so much.
Congratulations. That is so awesome. Now, you run these too, and I don't run. I did do some long-distance bike rides years ago.
Yeah.
That sense of just getting through it, knowing for me it was when I first said I wanted to do, everyone being like, oh, you're never going to do this. And that fueled me even more. How about for you?
Yeah, I love it. For me, running is, I love setting a goal and accomplishing that. But also it's a big part of my mental health, helping me kind of decompress. I love getting out there and running. And, today is Medal Monday. So if you guys tag us at hellohouston.show on Instagram if you're showing off your medal that you just ran. Be sure to tag us. But I love it. Personally, I had a lot of FOMO this year, not running it, getting ready for it. But this year, the Houston Chevron Marathon was bumped up a whole weekend. So it was a whole week before. Usually it's the weekend of MLK. And Edgar Savala, who also works here at HPM at Houston Public Media, ran it. And I saw him this morning. And I said, congratulations, because he not only ran yesterday 26.2 miles, but he also showed up for work today. So all of those runners who are at work today, congratulations.
If you ran the marathon, give us a call. Let us know. How are you feeling today? I would love to know. I think part of me wants to hear what pain everyone is in, because then I can justify having not done it, to be like, well, I saved myself that pain. But, it's so good for you. It's so healthy to be out there, to be active, to stay young, as Eric said, Good for them. Speaking of things that are good for us, politics could be good for us if we make the right choices when we go to the polls. We're going to be seeing what's coming up in 2026 on today's show. What are the issues we should be paying attention to? Who are on the ballots? When these actual elections are happening? It's a very confusing election season, especially for those of us right here in Harris County. And that's all coming up when Brandon Rottinghaus joins us from Party Politics in just a little bit. But as we've been talking about, so congratulations to all the marathon runners. We're looking forward to the rest of the show. Now we begin with headlines. Celeste, take us away.
Thank you, Ernie. Texas governor is calling out Harris County, threatening to take control of its elections. The governor was referencing a recent Houston Public Media report about Harris County's tax office finding more than 100 voter registrations linked to private P.O. boxes. This is a violation of state laws aimed at bolstering election integrity. The Republican governor wrote in a social media post that the state's most populous county, which has become a Democratic stronghold in recent years, should be stripped of operating elections, and potential legal charges should also be considered. In a statement Friday, newly appointed interim Harris County Attorney Jonathan Fambone said the governor has no authority to seize control of the county's elections or pursue criminal charges against its elections officials. He said the Harris County tax assessor, collector, and voter registrar's office has already addressed the issue that was first raised in November by Houston-based state senator Paul Betancourt, whose complaint prompted an investigation by the Texas Secretary of State's office. What are your thoughts? Should the state take over Harris County elections? Now is the time to join us at 713-440-8870.
One point is that even though they did find more than 100 voter registrations linked to private post office boxes, they did not find any obvious fraud in that. It was, according to the current laws, it was incorrect that that happened. But doing something wrong policy-wise and fraud are very different things.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, right? Because Governor Abbott has been vocal in the past about him keeping a close eye on Harris County. Mm-hmm. He said Harris County was a, quote, repeat violator of election integrity. And he has talked about state intervention before. This is something that we continue to see. Harris County, obviously being one of the largest counties in the state. And what's interesting is that Harris County officials say the governor lacks the authority to seize control of local elections. Mm-hmm. But the law does include provisions for state oversight of local elections under certain conditions. And that legislation was passed back in 2023 with the framework for the state to be able to take over local elections. And it's, I believe, very uncommon for a county specifically like Harris County to be written into legislation. Mm-hmm. And so this is an ongoing back and forth, and I don't know if it's going to stop.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go there, but you took me right there. And yeah, I don't think it's going to stop. What you have is you have a very strong Republican administration at the state level that wants to remain a very strong Republican administration at the state level. And Houston, Harris County, is this little blue island that they feel there's inroads where they can turn it red. Mm-hmm. And my concern is that they want to turn it red at any way they can, as opposed to letting the voters' voices be heard. And we've speculated this before with other elected officials that polling and indicators imply that if you truly looked at the state of Texas, it's almost 56% Democratic. But they don't vote. And so the Republican stronghold, the Republican voice that's out there, does vote, does register, does get out there. And so they control what happens here. And the way the laws are set up, they have the ability to influence that. Going after a community like Harris County to justify taking control of their election system because you don't like the results that are coming out of there, I have issue with that. Yes, there could be 100 things that are wrong. Think about how many voters are registered. And the job of the election officials is to constantly be checking that and making sure it's accurate. And if they find a problem, addressing the problem.
Right. And it's interesting, right? Because we're talking about going after counties or Harris County specifically. And you have to look at, as Texas, as a state, our demographic is constantly shifting. And when you look at those demographic shifts, how can, as a state as a whole, how is it sustainable to be looking and pinpointing at specific counties and saying, we're going to go after you, or we think that there's fraud here? That's not sustainable.
Well, it's the same way in redrawing the maps. They looked at strong Democratic holds and want to redraw them and break them up so that they become, and that's not even speculative. They've distinctly said they want more Republican seats, and they're going to break up these strongholds of Democrats so they can get Republicans in there. There's got to be a better system. There's got to be a better way. But the problem is there's always one party or the other in control of it. And so belief being, now right now the Republicans seem much more aggressive in this than we have seen Democrats when it comes to this, but both have gerrymandered. Both have tried to find a map that favors what they believe. There's got to be nonpartisan, truly nonpartisan election maps drawn, and I don't know how this ends.
Yeah. And again, 713-440-8870. You're listening to Hello Houston. You can join the conversation by calling or texting. We did receive a text regarding the marathon, and this person says, the marathon was an incredible inconvenience for thousands of people. I can't believe they would cause such an unbelievable disruption to traffic conditions in a city already overwhelmingly burdened with poor infrastructure and heavy traffic. Go run in nature, or at least don't make it impossible for thousands and thousands of residents to get to and from work and park at their homes. Joey from Uptown.
You know, Joey, I live near the path. I feel your pain. But you know what? God bless them. They're out there running. We're in cars.
One day.
It's usually, and for me, it's usually before I even get up, they're done running. So, have a little grace. To go back to our comments about the elections and the election policy and stuff in our state, the state, Wine Goddess writes, the state needs to stay out of city and county business. Whatever happened to the Republican mantra of local control? I guess that only applies when they are in control. My British computer guy, big whoop, only 100. That's a fraction of the percentage of voters. Hardly what I'd call a big issue. That was my point. There are so many people. I mean, we have 4 million in the area. I don't know how many are registered to vote and all of that, but 100, you got to think in terms of percentages, and that is tiny. And as the new head of voter registration and the Harris County tax assessor said, they addressed it. They heard about the problem and they went after it. So,
and the perception that sometimes people are trying to put out there that there's major voter fraud versus the reality.
Right. We had a couple more comments. Governor Abbott sowing distrust in the system. And then another one, maps first, now elections. Yes, what's next? So we're interested. Share with us what you think. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. Before we wrap up, I think everyone must know this. Today is Kiss a Ginger Day. There's a redhead in your life. You got to give him a kiss today. That's the day to do it. But of course, only consensual kisses are allowed on Kiss a Ginger Day. I certainly hope they're talking about redheads and not the root vegetable, because that would be really kind of
Ernie,
silly.
I really missed you. I think we missed your tidbits.
Another tidbit, National Clean Off Your Desk Day. I have accomplished this one because we had recarpeting done how many months ago here?
Maybe 3 or 4 months ago.
We all had to clean out our offices so that they could do that. They put us back in there, and I still haven't unpacked. So my desk is still clean, so I win this year because I usually have a very cluttered desk.
Yes, but coming up on Hello Houston.
She's like, I don't know what to do with it.
I'm moving on. Coming up on Hello Houston, from high-stake elections to economic concerns, we will discuss what is driving Texas politics in 2026 with Brandon Rottinghaus, professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Houston and co-host of Houston Public Media's Party Politics. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Lenny Ambrose from St. Arnold Brewing Company, proud supporters of Houston Public Media. Right now, with your $60 donation, you can choose tickets to News and Brews. This member-exclusive event takes place February 17th. Enjoy a pint, connect with fellow NPR fans, and meet the Houston Public Media Newsroom in person. Select News and Brews tickets when you donate at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Support comes from the Houston Automotive Show at NRG Center, highlighting the latest vehicles, off-roading adventures, and automotive technology displays within the combined auto and boat event. More information on schedules, exhibitors, and venue details at automotiveshow.com.
Support comes from Alley Theater, presenting Real Women Have Curves, the play that inspired the film, following 5 women balancing family, work, and cultural expectations with humor and heart. Opens January 23rd, alleytheater.org. Support comes from Rice University's Master of Interdisciplinary Studies, a flexible degree taught by Rice faculty, balancing life and learning for working adults. Applications due by October 15th. More at gls.rice.edu.
Support comes from the law firm McFarland PLLC, eminent domain attorneys focused exclusively on representing landowners against the government's taking of private property for public use across the state of Texas. More at McFarlandPLLC.com.
Support comes from Dekamara, presenting soprano Julia Bullock and pianist Connor Hannock with Olivier Messiaens, Song Cycle Harawi, Song of Love and Death. January 30th at Wortham Center. Tickets at dekamara.com. Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
We are just a few weeks into 2026, and the Texas political landscape is already starting to take shape. So who are the major players positioning themselves for the next election cycle? Which races should Texans be paying attention to, from statewide offices to the legislature and Congress? And which rising political stars could shape the future of Texas politics? To help us break it all down, we're joined by Brandon Rottinghaus, professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Houston and co-host of Houston Public Media's Party Politics. Brandon, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hey, Celeste, how are you?
Doing well. If you have a question for Brandon, you can call or text 713-440-8870.
Hello there, Brandon. Before we get into all of what we said we would talk about, I want to go back to the story Celeste was just talking about, and it's Governor Abbott's threatening to seize control of Harris County elections. What's the possibility here, and what really could happen?
I think that people should take Governor Abbott at his word on this. There's been a lot more centralization happening under his watch. This has, to some degree, been a kind of watchword of his governorship. So I think it's probably at least more realistic than not. Obviously, this has been, as you all talked about, a point of contention for local governments versus state governments. It's been a point of contention for Republicans versus Democrats. So it's impossible for elections to be run perfectly smoothly. They're run by people, and people make mistakes. This is just the nature of things. But as you noted, these things can be corrected, and there are processes in place to correct them. So perhaps it's overreach, perhaps it's over exuberance, but there is, I think, still, given the political situation, the likelihood that we're going to see some effort to try to have some control over what happens at Harris County elections.
What would that look like on the ground for us voting? Would we even notice this, or how would it materialize?
It's a really good question. It's unclear what precisely the governor means here. There's not any kind of platform or legal standing that lets this happen naturally. It would have to be an emergency, and that emergency would probably spell out some of the specifics about what happens. I suspect it would start with cleaning the voter rolls in a more pronounced way. I suspect it would probably mean a lot more staff to be able to administer elections leading up to and then of those elections. We actually have a lot of different elections in a way, and because we're voting for so long and for so many different offices, there's always a need for more staff. So it's possible that that's what he's thinking, but it's also possible that it's all just bluster, and the governor wants to make a case in an election year that we have problems in elections and that have been something that rallies Republicans, and that he's the only one who can fix them. So it's really hard to know exactly what the specifics are until we see them.
You mentioned something, as often is the case when we talk with you I think I know where we're going to go, and you say something and it triggers something in my head, and I'm going a different direction here. You mentioned voter rolls. If I'm not mistaken, didn't I see a story recently that just said that the state of Texas turned over its voter rolls to the federal government?
It did. The Trump administration had asked states for essentially these voter rolls from every state. Not every state's complying. There's some who are pushing back, some who are suing with the expectation that they can keep those things themselves because that's the way the law reads. Some states, of course, are willing to comply with the Trump administration. Texas is one of them. So a lot of information that is not just about how, where people vote and, when they vote is going to go to the federal government.
Do we know why the federal government wants it?
Their argument is that they want to be able to look carefully at the voter rolls to make sure that there aren't people who shouldn't be on there and or people who are voting incorrectly or illegally. And so that's what they're claiming. But there's a lot of information in there that people are saying they're worried that if the Trump administration gets a hold of it, could be used against them in some particular way, either how people vote or potentially some of the specifics about the information that people sign up with when they sign up to vote. So there are some concerns that this could lead to some overreach. And, there's a time when the Republican Party, when they would never have allowed this, if the administration was a Biden administration or a Harris administration, the likelihood of the state turning over these numbers is very low. But obviously the politics of this line up in such a way that the Abbott administration is going to work with the Trump administration on this.
And just to put a button on that, states are in charge of voting, not the federal government. So for them to be looking at this even seems to raise some questions.
Yeah, that's a patchwork quilt of regulations and rules across the country. In a way, it's supposed to be this clunky. It's done at the local level on purpose, and that's something that does allow for there to be individuality and some some degree of innovation if need be. So there's a lot of variety on purpose. So yes, the federal government, it's seeking to centralize some of this, and Texas definitely complied.
Brandon, something that we're also going to be looking at are the March 3rd primaries, and voters are going to choose nominees for a very wide range of offices, and one of those being the governor's office. And it was interesting because Ernie and I were discussing, the candidates and looking at it. Talk to us a little bit about what you think is to come in that race.
This is going to be a really interesting race. Greg Abbott is going for a record-setting term, and if he continues the 4 years that he would be elected to, then he would break Rick Perry's record, which nobody thought would be broken. So this is definitely an important election for that purpose. And obviously, to some degree, it's a referendum on Greg Abbott's time in office. Every governor looks for a moment to be able to put their stamp in terms of policy on the office. And Governor Abbott has tried to do that with a couple of different issues. Education policy is one, but there's been a lot of pushback on that. And some of the implementation of that could be problematic. Jeannie Hinojosa, who is the Democrat, one of the Democrats running against him, is making a case that she thinks that this is wrong-headed. It's moving Texas educationally in a different and wrong way. And it's, I think, going to be part of this battle that really has implications for all of the state, but especially for Harris County. Greg Abbott has promised to spend a big chunk of his $90 million war chest to keep, or rather turn, Harris County red. So it's going to be a pretty competitive race.
It's strange because Celeste and I were also talking about this, the fact that I think a lot of people don't even realize there is a governor's race because other races are getting so much attention. In some ways, that truly does help Abbott out because if people aren't focusing on it, he's going to slide back into office. But there's also the chance that if there's strong turnout in other races, then they will help carry a Democrat into the governor's office. But I don't know that much of that is possible at this point in Texas. What I do think is funny, though, before we get into all of what's going to happen in March, okay, so we've got an election to fill the 18th. And then that person goes into office, and then there's a primary for the 18th, which is really going to confuse people.
Right. And to confuse matters more, the 18th is newly redrawn, so it'll actually be a totally different district. About half the people who are in the old 18 won't be in the new 18. So all I can say is pay attention to what's going on because there's just a lot going on On your point about turnout, I think it's exactly right. It's really hard to get people to pay attention to state politics, which I think is a shame because it's so fascinating. Local politics are the best politics, and there's a tremendous amount of power that state officials have. Many of them are running in this election in a competitive way. So this is a moment for voters to be able to weigh in on some of these big races and make their voices heard.
Yeah. When we talk about state politics, this isn't necessarily state. It does go again to national and federal, but it does involve the state of Texas, and that's our race for our Texas senator position. And I'm curious, earlier polling, and I don't know the most recent number, so you can help me with this, kind of indicated that Jasmine Crockett would very easily or could very easily win the primary, but not as good a chance as winning the seat, where Tallarico has a less chance of winning the primary, but shows a better chance of winning the seat. Are poll numbers still pointing that way? And what does that then say to Democratic voters on how they should logically vote?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Anyone who spent more than a few minutes on Texas political Twitter has seen the fights between the Tallarico folks and the Crockett folks. So it definitely is going to be a question Democrats have to answer in a very real way. What to me is interesting is that this is really a question of tone, not necessarily about substance. These are two candidates who effectively are very similar in terms of their ideological views. They have very different tactics and beliefs about how to get there. And that is really what separates them. So as you note, the voters are going to have to make a decision about where they want the party to go. But really, the fact that there are no kind of moderates left in the race, the fact that this is really a kind of younger generation taking over shows that the Democratic Party is moving in that direction. It's not true in every race up and down the ballot, but for this, the marquee race in the state, it's certainly the case that this is an important one. How voters choose is going to largely be depending, I think, on a race that hasn't yet really unfolded. There's going to be a debate in a couple of weeks that'll, I think, clarify some things for people. And definitely we're going to see a lot more advertising. James Tallarico came out with an ad this week that sort of, tries to set the stage a little bit. So voters are going to have to make these tough decisions when it comes to who's going to take on John Cornyn or Ken Paxton or Wesley Hunt. That side also is pretty interesting and has yet to be decided.
Before we wander away from Crockett and Tallarico, and I don't know if it's just what's in my feed, but what I tend to see, and tell me if this is something you've noticed and if this is policy of these campaigns, I see Crockett talking issue. And from Tallarico, all I see is we need more money, we need more money, we need more money. What is the logic behind that? And is this the focus of at least these candidates, these campaigns on social media?
Yeah, they're in very different positions right now. Tallarico, despite the fact that the Democrats have known him and have been interested in him and his candidacy for a few months longer than Crockett, has still not registered in terms of name ID in a place that they want to be. That is, they want to get that number up and they're not. So they have to have money to accomplish that. So leaning on donors is one way to do it. He's pretty effective at raising money in small amounts and in large chunks. That's what any candidate these days has to do. For her, I think she wants to introduce herself in a way that's not just about kind of Jasmine Crockett spitting fire from the dais, at the House chamber or in committee. There are a lot of facets to every campaign. And for her, I think she wants to show something a little bit different. So it's possible that's how they're organizing this. But both are in the same position. They both need money. They both want to introduce themselves and have their messaging more clear. And they want to avoid being labeled by Republicans in a way that might hurt them.
Right. And speaking of Republicans, do you think Representative Wesley Hunt has a real chance at potentially taking on this role?
Yeah, speaking of generational fights, the Republican side is very much that. You're seeing a lot of this churn because the Democratic Party and Republican parties are both going through these big questions. I think that Wesley Hunt definitely represents a kind of different wing of the Republican Party. The problem is that he's not as well known. He tried to make some overtures in places where he wasn't known well. Dallas is a good example. And so they spent money trying to prime him. I think they were kind of hoping for that home run Trump endorsement. That's the thing probably that would seal the race for either or any of these candidates. But at this point, it didn't come. So I still think that he's in the mix. But the likelihood is that if you look at the polling, it's basically come down to Cornyn and Paxton.
Does Hunt being in the race hurt one over the other, either Paxton or Cornyn?
It's funny because, Wesley Hunt has said that he doesn't care who wins as long as it's not John Cornyn. It's an odd position to be in, but obviously I assume he would like to win over Paxton, and there are reasons that makes the party probably stronger moving into a pretty competitive cycle, and one where Texas Democrats are hoping to pick up a seat against long odds. So I think for him, he's in a position where he wants to advance the ball. It is, I think, the case that we're seeing a lot of members of Congress in a similar position. They're not lifers in Congress. It used to be that you'd go to Congress and you just stay your whole career there because that's how you generated longevity and that's the way that you get power in Congress. But he is really a short-termer. He wants that political flame, and he's been pretty effective at getting it. So he, I think, still at least reasonably in the mix on this, but it's going to be harder for him to be able to outmaneuver a John Cornyn who's got a lot more money. He just announced he's got a $7 million haul. Ken Paxton's name ID, especially among Republicans, is huge. So it's just hard for him to be able to find a niche audience here. And I think ultimately probably it hurts John Cornyn. I mean, that's the point, that you've got essentially the anti-Cornyn vote, which is pretty significant. And so he's hurting Cornyn right now more than he's hurting Paxton. But being an alternative as a conservative Republican in a race like this is still going to take some Paxton votes too from people who think Paxton might not be ethically ready to be able to run in a general election.
You're listening to Hello Houston. We are speaking with Brandon Rottinghaus, co-host of Houston Public Media's Party Politics. Brandon, we did receive a text from Angelo in the North Side who said, "We know that it is a busy year for elections and that our local election officials are going to work hard to make sure those elections run as smoothly as possible. At one point, should a voter in Harris County be concerned? At what point should Harris County be concerned that our election results might not be counted under the law, given that the state and federal leadership are clearly doing whatever they can now to sway the results of elections? At what point should our red flags go up?" This is Angelo in the North Side.
It's a really good question. I know a lot of people ask me this in various forms. And I think what I typically tell them is that you have to trust elections. We have to have faith in our process. And we have to be able to trust that the election officials are doing their jobs well. That's in part why we have such a kind of fragmented system. It's on purpose so that we have more access to the ways that our local officials are running elections. Obviously, there are concerns that this could become something more problematic. And sometimes this gets us into conspiracy theories, which don't have as much basis in fact. And so I guess my caution to people is to be aware and, be vigilant, but don't worry about every moment of it, because I think that it does tend to undermine elections. And if part of what a lot of people who want to see elections be, downgraded do is to try to encourage people to not trust the system, then they've essentially won. So I feel like maintaining that faith and keeping our trust in elected officials and appointed officials to do their job is the way to go.
We have talked about what's going on for the Texas Senate race, including Paxton running for that, which then does mean that our attorney general position is open. And so there's a race going on there, too. Democrats are fighting hard to try and win that seat. What do you see going on in that race? Who should we be paying attention to?
That's a pretty sleepy race so far. We haven't had as much fireworks on the Democratic side as we see on the Republican side. I think both the candidates that are prominent in this, Joe Jaworski from Galveston and Nathan Johnson, who's a senator from the Dallas area, are both good candidates. They're both essentially running on a kind of not Ken Paxton track. Their goal is to say we should get the office back to basics, right? No more kind of going off on these wild political goose chases, bring some of the efforts to, litigate inside the office instead of outsourcing a lot of these law issues, which is what the attorney general is doing. So there has been a bit of a shift in terms of how Democrats would like to see this office. But what underscores all of this is that you're seeing a real change in terms of how the attorney general's office functions. It used to be kind of a sleepy office where they had, control over, prosecuting people for not paying child support. But that office has expanded in part under Ken Paxton. So for sure, he's left his mark on the institution itself. So now I think you have to look at like Texas politics as having a big four. You've got the Speaker of the House, Lieutenant Governor, and the Attorney General.
So before we leave Attorney General race, though, I'm also curious, the Republican candidates for that race, and forgive me if this is the wrong way to put it, but there doesn't seem to be the big rock star marquee name in that race. which I would expect because it's a strong seat. And as you mentioned, it's become more powerful. It's the AG. Republicans want to hold on to it. Am I reading the candidates that are running wrong here?
I think the closest that they've got to a kind of rock star is probably Chip Roy, who is leading in most polls. There's some chance he could win this without a runoff, but there are some quality candidates in this race. You've got Mace Middleton, who's been a senator for several years. You've got Aaron Reitz, who is an attorney, former Trump official, and definitely has brought the fire to that race. You've got Joan Huffman, who is a state senator from the Houston area. So there are some really top quality candidates here on the Republican side, and they're all trying to make the case that they're going to be Ken Paxton plus. They want to make the case that they're going to focus on all the things that Ken Paxton focused on, plus some other things, especially law and order issues, like people like Joan Huffman's making this case. So this has turned into a race that will be, I think, competitive. But Chip Roy generally, because of his name ID, he's been in Congress for a while, and he was kind of antagonist actually to Ken Paxton, was kind of emerges as the leader. So although he's not running a kind of I'll run the office like Ken Paxton type effort, he definitely will focus on the same kinds of efforts and same kinds of issues that Ken Paxton did.
Quickly before we run out of time, we can't talk politics without at some point bringing in President Trump and Jerome Powell. If you could, in just a brief setup, explain what's going on there and why we should be paying attention.
Yeah, the general thrust of this is that the president and the Fed chair don't see eye to eye in terms of policy. Obviously, the president thinks that the executive branch is under his purview. The Fed chair is independent by law. And obviously, Jerome Powell has his own objections to what the president's doing. What we saw happen today was that there's an investigation that's been opened up that is attempting to examine.
Criminal investigation.
Criminal, yes, to examine the changes that are taking place at some of the buildings that the Fed is in DC. And there's this claim that the Fed chair knew this and has committed some kind of fraud. So the investigation is technically about that, but what the Fed chair said in a very public statement that is not common for him to do is that this is a pretext for trying to control the office. So it's not surprising that President Trump wants to have more oversight and control over the executive branch, especially that which controls a significant chunk of the economy and the economy's direction. So it depends, of course, on sort of who you believe here, but it is definitely the case that this is creating a kind of ripple economically. Anytime that the president has attempted to invest and inject himself into economic discussions like this, it's led to some economic turmoil. And that's something that, as a president whose party is running for re-election substantially and they're hoping to hold the line, is not a good fit.
Brandon Rottinghaus is a professor in the Department of Political Science at the University of Houston and co-host of Houston Public Media's Party Politics. Brandon, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thanks.
Coming up, a look at Houston Freedmen's Town and why we should all know its history. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Support comes from JAMS, introducing mediator and arbitrator Paul D. Clote, providing alternative dispute resolution services in complex business and commercial disputes in Houston, Austin, and Central Texas. Paul D. Clote. More at jamsadr.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Holocaust Museum Houston, featuring 6 interactive exhibitions in both English and Spanish. Details at hmh.org.
Support comes from Rothko Chapel, presenting the 31st MLK birthday observance. We Got Us, Health and Care Beyond Capitalism, on January 15th at 6:30 p.m. More information at rothkochapel.org.
Join us for Hello Houston, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., taking a deep dive into the stories that matter to Houstonians, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained, with the generous support from our founding sponsor, John Bradshaw.
Support comes from Theater Under the Stars and the Broadway musical $1 Million Quartet, featuring the music of Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins. February 17th through March 1st at the Hobby Center. Tickets at tuts.org. Support comes from Visit Galveston, presenting Galveston Museum Weekend, an annual event highlighting a variety of museums and cultural institutions across the island, exploring local history and heritage. January 23rd through 25th. More at visitgalveston.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
Freedmanstown is a historic neighborhood located in Houston's 4th Ward and just happens to be the neighborhood where I live. Founded in 1865 by formerly enslaved people, Freedmanstown soon grew into a major epicenter for the Houston Black community, known for its business, churches, as well as its iconic brick streets. Today, it serves as a testament to the resolve of Black Americans, with its history kept alive by the efforts of the Houston Freedmentown's Conservancy. To tell us more about that, its history, and the Conservancy's work is Sharon Fletcher, who is the Executive Director of Houston's Freedmentown Conservancy. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. I am excited to actually be here. Thank you guys for having me, and looking forward to this discussion about Freedmanstown.
Thank you. And if folks want to join the conversation, all you have to do is give us a call or text us 713-440-8870.
You know, Sharon, as Ernie kind of mentioned in his intro, Freedmantown, it isn't just a place on the map. It tells a story that represents really a vital place in American history. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Freedmanstown isn't just a neighborhood. It is a living monument to what formerly enslaved people built for themselves when freedom finally arrived. So this community that was built by the newly freed people is one that, we hope that people, are inspired by, that they see, this story of resilience. We hope that they're, through all of the things that have happened through the course of the time in Freedmanstown, that people see this, Freedmanstown as, this sort of like strength, if you will, in terms of being able to build a community from the ground up, from scratch, from absolutely nothing. This community was originally settled on the south banks of Buffalo Bayou, which was essentially, an uninhabitable place. And now we're able to enjoy the community that we now know, with homes and schools and businesses, and of course, in the historical brick streets that still remain there. There are a little over 35 historical structures and assets that still remain in the community. So with the continued existence of Freedmanstown, we hope that people see this, this as a continued symbolic place of what African-American people were able to do and to build, and thinking about the self-sustainability and the economic vibrancy of this community, and also understanding that it is the birthplace of Black Houston in the city of Houston. So when we think about the communities like 5th Ward and 3rd Ward, their birthplace actually comes from the community of Freedmanstown. So we're hoping that as we continue to do this work, that the identity of the community continues to strengthen and deepen individuals' understanding and cultural awareness for this community, and understanding that it also needs to be protected as well.
Yeah, let me jump in on that point.
American history.
I want to jump in on that point about protecting it, because you are in an area that the real estate is becoming more and more valuable, so close to downtown. Also with the expansions and the changes and what's going to happen with the highways there is going to affect that neighborhood there. And as I see it from where I stand, so much of it is being lost every single day. More townhouses are going in, more construction, more What is the big challenge you folks face in preserving this neighborhood?
Well, Houston does not have zoning laws, so that has been one of the biggest challenges that the community of Freedmanstown has faced in the years past. But some of the work that the Conservancy and other community organizations have been involved in since our inception in 2018, we are the first heritage district of the city of Houston, and so with that heritage district ordinance or designation, what it does is allow us to be able to protect the public right-of-ways like the historical brick streets, which has paved the way for one of the current projects that we're in called Rebirth in Action, the Brick Street Project, in addition to the work on the Conservation District's ordinance as well for historical communities like Freedmanstown, like Independence Heights, Sunnyside, Third Ward, and even the Heights. Those two ordinances have given us a way to be able to protect the community, but also be in communication with those who are looking to build within the community. And so we've seen over the past 7-8 years, we're now with those two ordinances in place, we are seeing people come together and have these conversations around not only progress, but continued preservation of the community. So it's been one of the biggest things, of course, the challenges that the community has faced. As you guys know, historically, 45 freeway came through, I believe, in the late 50s and cut the community in half. And so when people see Antioch on the other side of the freeway, they don't typically associate Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, which is the oldest African-American church here in Houston. They don't associate that with Freedmanstown, but it is a Freedmanstown structure and community asset as well. But in these few, like you said, in these recent years, we've been able to do some of this work to kind of mitigate some of these things and bring in continued advocacy, if you will, where people understand the importance of protecting this 160-year-old community.
Help people understand, though, what is lost if we lose these buildings. So much in Houston, we tear down, we build something new, people move forward all the time. From your guys' point of view, what do you see as the harm in losing this community?
So the harm in losing this community is for, the lost story, right? We, in addition to protecting these physical assets, telling the story of Freedmanstown has also been critically important. And I think to be able to tell a story, but also be able to show the evidence of that story is completely important. It strengthens cultural identity, especially for, African Americans who, in some, you could say in this current climate where there's this significant kind of, effort to erase contributions of African Americans to, not only Houston's history, but to American history. And so it's important that we protect this story in the way in which we're doing it, not only from a story perspective, but also tangible assets as well. These assets can, I know people love to tear things down and build something new because they like new shiny objects, but also historical assets can be shiny objects as well. They can tell the story that other things can't tell. The historical significance behind this community is really important. And so that work continues through our efforts like Rebirth in Action, the work and the efforts of the Freedmanstown Visitor Center, where we're talking about the people, the places, the things of this community to help people really understand the importance of keeping this place intact. And it takes more than just us to do that. So advocates and allies and our community organizations and the churches, we're all working together to continue to do this work.
Sharon Fletcher is the executive director of the Houston Freedmanstown Conservancy. Sharon, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Coming up, we're going to continue discussing today's top headlines. We'll also talk with Raheel Ramzanali, former ESPN radio and CityCast Houston, who will share his thoughts on tonight's big game between the Texans and the Steelers. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, presenting Art and Life in Imperial Rome, Trajan and His Times, exploring the impact Emperor Trajan had on art and culture during his reign. Now on view, tickets at mfah.org.
We have a mostly sunny day in store today, getting up to around 60, and mostly cloudy tonight, a low 47. Currently, it's 53. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston, News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is deploying more federal agents to Minnesota as nationwide protests continue. We'll discuss this and more of today's top stories. I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
And I'm Ernie Manous. We'll also talk with Jaime González, the new director of the University of Houston's Institute for Ecological Resilience, about his vision for the Institute.
Plus, Raheel Ramzanali will share his thoughts on tonight's big playoff game between the Houston Texans and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Minneapolis public schools are now giving students the option to shift back to remote learning for the next month in light of the immigration enforcement standoff playing out in the region. A spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security says more than 2,000 arrests have been made since the start of December. Confrontations with protesters have not let up since an ICE agent fatally shot U.S. citizen Renee Good, a white 37-year-old mother of 3. The administration says agents have the right to defend themselves while they attempt to make communities safer. Critics, such as Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, argue the real threat is ICE and racial profiling.
What's happening is full-on discrimination. It's targeting Somali people in our city, targeting Latino people in Minneapolis, and looking for a problem that, to be clear, we are not seeing on our streets.
Mayor Frey on NPR's Morning Edition. President Trump says Tehran has asked to set up negotiations over the widespread protests engulfing Iran. He said a meeting could be arranged but would not rule out U.S. strikes against Iran beforehand. Here's NPR's Jackie Northam.
President Trump said the U.S. might have to act before any meeting with Tehran because of, quote, what's happening in Iran. Thousands of protesters poured into the streets in all corners of the country. Videos of large crowds, burning buildings, and dead bodies in the street and morgues were posted on social media despite an ongoing internet and cell phone blackout. Tehran has not publicly said anything about a meeting with the U.S. Earlier on Sunday, a senior member of Iran's parliament warned that U.S. bases and ships in the region would be legitimate targets for preemptive strikes if it looked as though the U.S. would attack. But Iran's military capabilities were badly weakened during the 12-day war with Israel last June. Jackie Northam, NPR News.
Nurses across New York City are on strike. NPR's Kristen Wright reports their union says as many as 15,000 are picketing.
Nurses from 5 hospitals in New York walked off the job. They want to preserve health care benefits, safer staffing, and protections from workplace violence. A man with a sharp object barricaded himself in a hospital room in Brooklyn and was shot and killed by police last week. Darla Joyner is on the picket lines. She's been a nurse for 12 years and is part of the union's bargaining committee.
That's the thing with our job. It can go from 0 to 100. And you can't really say it's just an emergency unit or a psych department. It can happen anywhere in the hospital.
The strike comes during a terrible flu season. Governor Kathy Hochul has declared a disaster emergency due to healthcare staffing shortages. Kristen Wright, NPR News.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. Harris County deputies and homicide investigators are on scene of an apparent double murder in Katy. A man and a woman in their 50s were found dead from apparent gunshot wounds inside a home on Bent Springs Lane near Mason Road and Grand Parkway. Crime scene investigators and detectives were working the scene for clues and more information. Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said that there was a 7-year-old foster child and 2 adult children also living in the home. They heard the gunshots and found the male victim in the living room and the female victim near the kitchen. The identity of the victims is not known at this time. No other details are available. Houston Congressman Al Green among those honoring the Minnesota woman killed by ICE. He says the death of Renee Good has created a fear among people protesting the immigration crackdown.
We want to make sure that people do not leave their homes in fear of the constabulary. And people are. I have had people today to tell me they are afraid for themselves. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I'm afraid for myself.
Green made the comments during a vigil held in downtown Houston. He and other local area lawmakers are calling for an independent investigation into Good's death. In sports, the Houston Texans will be on the road for the first playoff game on a Monday night, this one against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Houston has held their opponents to 16 points a game, and when the Texans score 20 points, they don't lose. The game kicks off tonight at 7:15. If Houston wins, they'll battle the New England Patriots on the road in their next game. Your check of weather: sunny today with some clouds, a high of 62 degrees. Becoming mostly cloudy overnight with a low of 47. Right now, partly cloudy, 53 degrees on the UH campus. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
And we are back with you for the second hour of Hello Houston. Frank is still taking a little time off, but you've got Celeste and Ernie.
We're here, and it is January 12th. We are moving right along into 2026.
Tom asked me earlier, he was like, the week's beginning. I was like, does that mean the weekend's over? And then I thought, and I was like, yeah, but we have a 3-day weekend at the end of the week. So we get a little something. So you can make it through this week as we start this Monday. Well, I guess we've started it, but in this Monday.
We're full into this Monday.
We are full into it. There's a lot going on out there. And you know what? We've got lots of topics. We've been talking about a lot of stuff in the first hour. We got more to talk about in this hour. Why do I say all that? Because we invite you to join the conversation. Our YouTubers over on YouTube stay active and they are involved in all the conversation. You can join us. Just go to HoustonPublicMedia.org and there's a button there, purple button you can press to watch us live, or just go to YouTube and look for Hello Houston, and we stream live every day. And join this group. So a shout out to our YouTubers. Hope you're doing well today.
Yeah.
They're a great group. You can also call, join the conversation. I would say, what's the weather like? But you don't really do weather for me, do you?
But, we spoke to Eric Berger in the first hour, and he mentioned how it looks like it's going to be a great week, pretty clear and sunny. So it's going to be nice weather. This morning was beautiful, and yeah.
Yeah. All that being said, let's just get right into the headlines today. There's a lot going on still. I mentioned in the first hour that I wasn't here for some of the big stories that happened last week because I was out for a little bit. And one of those is feeding into today's first headline.
Yes, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is deploying more federal agents to Minnesota. The move comes as nationwide protests continued yesterday after an immigration and customs enforcement agent fatally shot Renee Good in Minneapolis last week. Some elected officials, including U.S. Rep. Ilhan Omar, are pushing back against DHS actions to bring in more agents and demanding a full investigation into Good's killing. U.S. representatives have typically been allowed to visit ICE detention facilities unannounced, but Homeland Security now requires elected officials to provide a 7-day notice to enter. At the Golden Globe Awards last night, actor Mark Ruffalo, actress Natasha Lyonne, and comedian Wanda Sykes were among the celebrities to be seen wearing anti-ICE lapel pins on the red carpet. Locally, a couple hundred anti-ICE demonstrators chanted in front of Houston City Hall on Saturday in what is at least the third protest in the city this week. Other events included protests in Kingwood and a candlelight vigil in Sugar Land. What are your thoughts? Did you take part in the protest, or do you support ICE? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
I wasn't here to talk about this, as I mentioned a moment ago, and so I bring a lot of feelings today to the topic because I didn't get to share them with you last week. And I think we all know people have a right to protest in this country. That is part of our freedoms here. And whether or not you are blocking traffic, whether or not you are doing all the things that the administration seems to believe happened from the footage they looked at, in no way, shape, or form does any of that allow you to be executioner, to shoot someone, to end someone's life because they are being, if you assume this, disobedient. And so I think from that basic point, no matter what side you come down on, watching the videos, looking at what happened, the death of a person who is protesting something that they have a strong belief against does not give the government the right to end their life. They can be arrested. There's other options. That being said, of course there is outrage, and we're going to continue to see that. But what is the solution? Where do we find healing in a moment like this? On whose shoulders is it that the healing must begin, and how do we do that? Do moves like what just happened with Homeland Security limiting our elected officials from visiting detention centers, does that just add more fuel to this fire? Their argument being that they're more in danger going in without having time to prepare for these elected officials to make a visit, and so they're trying to protect the elected officials. There is so much distrust, so much uncertainty in the way we move forward. I honestly, at this moment, don't know how we move forward without adding more fuel to this fire. So I'm curious what you think. As Celeste mentioned a minute ago, give us a call, share your opinion, 713-440-8870.
What I will say is a lost life is always a tragedy. Full stop. And again, 713-440-8870. You're listening to Hello Houston.
Yeah, it is a very difficult point. You mentioned the Golden Globes, and not to make light of what happened in Minnesota, but to continue to move forward with things in our lives that are, maybe a little more trivial, but a little lighter to talk about. Remember, we're always interested in your opinion, so please feel free to give us a call and share that with us. But I do want to move over to the Golden Globes. It is, we did see those pins, as you mentioned. Mark Ruffalo, Natasha Lyonne, Wanda Sykes among those supporting it, how we find ways to demonstrate. And you see a lot of that as we move into award season. And I think in some ways it's a way to read the feeling of our nation is in what are the things that are grabbing the attention and that people are standing up for and focusing on. So as we move into award season, keep your eye out for that. Look at what's being said, what's being done, and how an audience is reacting to it.
Now, Ernie, it's interesting that you say that, look to award season. I know that there are a lot of people that say they don't want to hear actors and actresses talk anything, politics or policy or anything major happening outside of the entertainment world.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that that is the place for, people to speak out and against policy or situations that are happening in our country? And I'm genuinely,
point.
I'm genuinely curious.
Point you bring that up. We hadn't talked about that. And I think for me, in some ways, I would have originally always said, no, that's not a place for that. We're here to see, how is Hamnet going to do this year? What's going to happen with these? One battle after another, is that going to win? But I do think it's a really good gauge of who we are as a people. Pop culture often reflects who we are and what we're feeling. Some would argue pop culture pushes us to what we should believe and feel and how we react to these things. So it's interesting to watch and see what does grab the zeitgeist of those folks that are in the public eye, because the cynic in me doesn't always believe it is totally natural that they react this way. I can't help but think they have publicists and managers and social media agents telling them where they should be on certain issues. So it's fascinating to watch and see who comes out in which way, but it's also interesting to see those who truly have a passion for it and will put their reputation and possibility of culture, of being cancel cultured on by believing in something so strongly. So I am fascinated to watch it.
Yeah.
I do find
and
that.
It's interesting because I think more than ever what has happened within pop culture is we've become divided.
Mm-hmm.
And politics has become so much a part of culture that even in pop culture, there's this division. And I see it whenever, as a mom, I get online and I'll see, that division of people saying, well, I'm not watching awards season anymore because I don't want to hear entertainers talk politics. And then I see other people saying, did you see the pins? Did you see the actors and the actresses coming out and using this as a platform? So it's very interesting times for sure from all facets of life right now.
It's weird because I think that there is a numbing nature to what happens in politics because of where we are today, that it feels very much like a reality show. It's played out very much like that. Each day you tune in to see what is the new storyline that they're going after, who's going to be voted out, who stays on the island, who's the real housewife of the White House. It's taken on that. And so the lines between what is pop culture and what is politics have very much gotten blurred and all kind of feed into each other.
And again, 713-440-8870. We do have a call from Menno on the line from Seabrook. Menno, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hello.
Hello, Menno. What's on your mind?
Well, on your segment about ICE, I have a comment that I'd like to make, and that is that I fully support ICE as long as they restrict themselves to their task, which involves immigration and customs, which they don't. And also, when they behave themselves as real law enforcement, not as a bunch of vigilantes dressed as military, armed as military, and behaving like a bunch of goons. So that's my comment.
Menno, thank you for that. And I think he makes a good point. And there are many that work in ICE that are there hired to do the work that ICE is charged with doing. There are many that have been there for many years and have had proper training. There is a concern that a lot of new people that have come into it have not had all the proper training they needed. The environment is so tense that you worry how people behave in those situations. We saw that in this shooting, that the officer that is suspected of doing the shooting or did do the shooting had been dragged by a car, or at least injured by a car months earlier. But then that makes you wonder, should he have been out in the field? You know, the constant building of the tension of the them against us approach to it all, it gets very problematic. And so I think, you know, if you're doing the work that legally you're supposed to be doing in the right way, then it, you know.
And again, we had Tony Payan of Rice University on Thursday, who did a in-depth with us looking into what the ICE protocols are and what we understand. You can go back to that interview on YouTube if you'd like to learn more. 713-440-8870. We have a call from Ijon from Missouri City.
Yes, hi. I really appreciate you guys covering what's happening here and all over the nation currently. And my thing is that as an American, we are allowed to protest.
Mm-hmm.
We are allowed to speak our mind. We are allowed to, you know, if something is going wrong, to go ahead and protest. But I totally understand ICE as well, but how they are going about it is totally out of control.
Mm-hmm. John, I hear your concerns.
More training, and just because you have a badge does not mean you can go ahead and take someone's life away.
Yeah. John, thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's a sentiment of a lot of folks, and we want to hear from you, 713-440-8870. I will say what fascinates me about this whole story, and then we can move on from it. It's how people can look at same images, same footage, and walk away with different conclusions, and so drastically different. And I wonder to myself, how much of what we see is there for us to see and process what's in front of us, and how much of it is for us to bring what we already come with and then reinterpret the visions we're seeing to match what we want it to be. It's the whole news silo effect, that you tend to navigate toward a news organization that's going to give you the news the way you want to hear it, as opposed to the way it used to be, where the facts were put out there and we all learned from those facts.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to watch these.
I think it was David Brooks who one time said people used to go to news for information. People now turn on the news for affirmation.
Yes, beautifully
said. You know, when we look at these type of situations, looking at videos and interpreting and deciding what it makes you feel better, you're going to interpret it as the way to make you feel better and push perhaps your beliefs, versus looking at it and really trying to understand the story.
Kristi Noem was on CNN this weekend with Jake Tapper, and they were having their discussion, their interview about what happened. And at one point she said to him, "Are you not seeing the same videos I'm seeing?" And I think that summed it up so well. You know, they're both looking at the same footage and they're both walking with very different points of view. But I think that there's also a belief of dishonesty on some levels in how people are interpreting it. And maybe they see something different than what they're saying. But once you buy into a particular point of view, people just go forward.
And just to put a button on this, at the end of the day, a life was lost.
Yeah. And
so
I heard
regardless
say,
of how you're looking at it, a life was lost.
I heard someone say it's video game culture, that we forget the fact that real people die. You see this on the air and it's like, oh yeah, a life was lost. But you don't really internalize a human being is no longer. A child doesn't have a mother. You know, a community lost one of their lights, and it's terrible.
Yeah. And again, 713-440-8870. Ben from Wharton is on the line. Ben, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment or question?
Yes. My comment is I support ICE.
Mm-hmm.
I support them. I'm a veteran, 85 years old, and I've been around halfway around the world and back. And I've come to recognize that when you are addressed and a officer of the law tells you to do something, you need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to do it. And then if you've got a problem with what he asked you to do, then turn around and come back through the courts with it. Because he's got the right. He's paid to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes, Ben.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Ben. But then to go back, yes, You should obey law enforcement officers and what they ask of you, but law enforcement officers shouldn't then make the choice whether or not you should be able to live another day. That's my take on it. Okay. Golden Globes were last night, we mentioned. It was an interesting night. I don't know if there were many surprises over at the Golden Globes.
I had it on my 2026 bingo that one battle after another was going to sweep. Garrett, one of our producers, and I had some conversation about whether they actually swept the Oscars or not. But
Golden Globes. We're
Golden
not at
Globes,
Oscars yet.
Golden Globes, excuse me. But yes.
Yeah,
So.
And what makes the Golden Globes interesting, Hamnet won for Best Drama, one battle after another one for Best Musical or Comedy.
What?
Yeah. I'm always fascinated by what makes musical or comedy category. But then that does put up the race then for the Oscars. Is it going to be a one battle after another or a Hamnet? It'll be interesting to see. They haven't done their nominees yet.
Maybe my bingo card was about the Oscars.
Yeah, you probably didn't do it for the Golden Globe. But you know what? You're still in contention then there. I'm excited. The SAG Awards, now called the Actor Award nominations, came out last week. Being a member of SAG-AFTRA, I get to vote. So I'm going to start watching all the films because I get screeners.
That's exciting.
So I'll get to see them.
I can't wait to come over and watch all of them.
Oh, we were talking about hanging out and doing that. That would be fun.
That would be fun.
Pick which movie you want to watch.
Okay,
and then we'll
I will.
Over and do it. Okay. I'm done. I'm done with that.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with Jaime González, the new director of the University of Houston's Institute for Ecological Resilience, about his vision for the Institute and why ecological resilience matters for the future of our region. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Michael Schaefer. My partner Ellen and I have been proud supporters of public radio and TV for decades.
We really would be lost without our daily fix of unbiased national and local news, cultural programming, and great entertainment.
But with recent federal defunding, stations like Houston Public Media face real challenges.
Now's the time to step up.
Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org.
Thank you.
Support comes from SunnyPro, a Houston-based business advisory firm providing tailored consulting solutions, specializing in technology assessments, cybersecurity, AI strategy, and more. Details at sunnypro.com or follow at SunnyPro LLC.
Support comes from the Houston Auto Boative Show at NRG Center, featuring boats for all lifestyles, marine gear, and fishing demonstrations within the combined auto and boat event. More information on schedules, exhibitors, and venue details at autoboativeshow.com.
Support comes from the Houston Symphony, featuring Marin Alsop, conducting Brahms Symphony No. 2, Bernstein's Serenade, and Barber's Second Essay for Orchestra, January 23rd through 25th at Jones Hall. More information at houstonsymphony.org.
Support comes from UT Health Houston, home to Dr. Ramesha Papana and the Fetal Center team, who pioneered a prenatal patch to help babies with spina bifida walk earlier and better. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Central Market, welcoming 2026 with winter wellness support in the Healthy Living Department, including supplements, sports nutrition, and body care. CentralMarket.com.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, after a double feature of Antiques Roadshow at 7, Voces presents American Sons at 9. Follow a group of Marines as they navigate the devastating loss of their comrade. Tonight on TV8.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
A new leader is stepping into a key role at the University of Houston, focused on how communities can better live with and protect the natural world around them. Jaime González has been named the new director of UH's Institute for Ecological Resilience, bringing a background in conservation, education, and climate adaptation rooted right here in Houston. And today we'll talk with him about his journey, his vision for the Institute, and why ecological resilience matters for the future of our region. Jaime, welcome to Hello Houston.
It is a real pleasure joining you.
Well, we're happy to have you here. And if you would like to join the conversation, all you have to do, call or text 713-440-8870. I guess just we'll start off with a very general question for a lot of people who didn't even know this institute existed. What is it? What do they do?
Yeah, so the Institute is a new unit here at the University of Houston. And really what our founding directive is to allow the University of Houston to lead and to collaborate to get more nature into communities in Greater Houston for resilience, for health, for enjoyment. This is something that's really important to the future of our communities. It's something that's very valued by Houstonians. But some neighborhoods in some places don't have enough nature, and so they are less resilient, less healthy. And so how can a big university like UH play a role in helping to get more nature out in the communities?
And I mean no disrespect in saying it's almost like you're the anti-technology AI wing. That like instead of going that direction where everything is computers, you guys are saying, wait a minute, let's remember this.
That's a really interesting point of view.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of shift it around a little bit.
Okay.
We're using a lot of technology as ecologists and other people bringing nature back to communities. But I also see nature as a form of ancient technology that has billions of years or hundreds of millions of years of research and development in the real world. So if we need to become spongier to soak up those stormwaters or cooler to fight these really hot Texas summers, we can deploy both natural technology in the form of what we call nature-based solutions, more trees, more stormwater wetlands, more prairies, alongside all of this technological prowess that we have here in the city.
So Jaime, when you're talking about communities that lack some of these ecological resources or nature, what do you notice when you go into these communities? Talk to us. Give us some real life examples of what those communities lack and what you all bring.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. I'm going to give you a good example for a neighborhood that I worked in, Gulfton. I love Gulfton. Very diverse neighborhood. I also lived there when I was doing my undergraduate degree here at UH because it was affordable housing.
Yeah.
But when a coalition of groups came together in 2020 and 2024 to map heat in Harris County, this neighborhood was between 14 and 17 degrees hotter on an August day than some other communities. So what that means is because of the lack of tree canopy cover, it means that moms who are walking their kids to school, the grocery store, have to endure these temperatures. You're more likely to have even a heat stroke waiting for the bus stop. So in very real, like everyday lived terms, it can make life very difficult. And so that's an example. There's some communities like Kashmir Gardens, for instance, where they have really bad flooding problems. So they get repeatedly flooded. You lose houses, you lose cars, you lose that generational wealth. And so how can nature not solve all of these problems, but help to mitigate them, help to make them better? And at the same time, I think, what I talk about is we need to protect people's bodies, their lungs, from flooding, from heating. But we know that nature has a really important role for people's mental health as well as their physical health. So it brings many different values to the table all at once.
How do you think Houston as a city and even Harris County as a whole does compared to other major metropolitan cities across the United States?
The great thing about Houston is it's a real capital for a lot of things, including innovation.
Yeah.
So I'm very kind of bullish on our ability to deploy more nature. Now, do we have as much nature as we could, or do we even have as much nature as other communities around the U.S. have? And the answer is we don't have enough nature yet, but we are making strides. So I think things like the Bayou Greenways project, some of the restorations in some of our major parks, which I've had an opportunity to be a part of, those are really great steps forward. Now, how can we get more nature into communities that need it? And another point is, how can we save this ancient nature that surrounds Houston so it can continue to serve us in terms of cleaning the air and soaking up water and making our region cooler? So how can we have this growth without stripping nature's capacity to protect us and make our lives better?
Now, it's interesting that you talk about this ancient nature, because a lot of people would say then if you're looking at ancient nature and you're looking at Houston, we're a swamp. We should be flooding. We're a bayou. So how do you balance that then?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And, the kind of founding mythology of Houston is we were built on this super wet swamp and mosquito infested. And there are definitely some truths around that. Most of Houston originally was a prairie. A lot of people don't recognize that. It has a lot of cultural call-outs in terms of rodeo, barbecue, bluebonnets, all those things. So I think it's culturally important. But it is low-lying. We're on a very flat plain. It floods very easily. And so I think the thing to think about is when I drive around the city, I see a lot of underperforming landscapes. Landscapes that aren't working hard for us. We're working hard for them. We're pouring in a lot of money. We're getting sometimes a lot of air pollution out of it, less sponginess. So when I look around the city, I think, how can we optimize the landscapes to serve us instead of us serving them? And what that means is on schoolyards, in parks, on power line easements, in big public spaces, houses of worship, these places that have these expansive lawns that actually come at a big cost. How can we transform these places into places that work hard for us?
We are speaking with Jaime González, who is the new director of the University of Houston's Institute for Ecological Resilience. If you'd like to join the conversation, give us a call or text, 713-440-8870. Gene is on the line from Southwest Houston. Gene, what's on your mind? Oh, hold on a second.
I'm very
Hold
glad
on
to
one
hear
second, because our guest has to put on his headphone. Now we're good to go. Okay.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that this discussion is happening. I'm sitting right now in a parking lot that's twice as big as it needs to be, and I'm wishing that half this concrete would be ripped out and the forest put back.
Gene, I think that is something a lot of Houstonians see a lot of the time.
Yeah, and Jaime, to Gene's point, we were talking about the Astrodome, and somebody said the most Houston thing that will happen to it is it'll get ripped out and made a parking lot. What do you think about parking lots, Gene, in Houston? Jaime.
Yeah, sure. So recently I actually used some AI, some advanced technology to create an Astrodome park rendering. So I don't know about the parking lot, but maybe a park would be better to kind of humanize and make that space better. But in terms of parking lots, what's interesting is that we look across the U.S. in places like Detroit, Philadelphia, Baltimore, what they've really recognized is that they have a role to play in terms of storing water and cleaning water before it gets discharged into their local river systems. And so they have vegetated troughs, which are called swales, that provide beauty and value in cooling, and they slow the water down so that it doesn't discharge. And, a lot of times, we have a water issue, but we also have just a time issue. How can we slow the water down to give those bayous, those rivers, time to slowly decrease the amount of water before discharging it very quickly? And so I think that if we think about parking lots as pieces of public infrastructure that can work harder for us and make the city less hot too, because there are other ways of providing paving solutions that are reflective and cooling than some of the traditional methods that we use right now, like black pavement, which is like super hot. And so I've taken thermal images of the parking lots. I couldn't agree more with you, caller. There's better ways of doing parking lots.
But I guess my question then would become is a lot of times when we try to implement solutions to issues such as ecological issues, it boils down to funding.
That's right.
And they are, somebody building a parking lot is going to say, well, that's really great in theory, but it's going to cost me double to add and implement these type of infrastructures that mitigate flooding or slow the water. What do you say to that?
No, it's a really excellent question because you can come up with as many schematics and plans as you want, but you have to live in the real world of economics. So I think this is part of the reason why this institute was so intriguing to me. We need to find novel financing for all of the solutions that we need. We don't have enough money for planting the trees that we want, much less transforming the parking lots. So is there a private-public partnership that can happen where there's pilot financing and other mechanisms so we can get to that? One of the things that is so astonishing when you go to the VA hospital where my dad gets his treatment is the whole parking lot is shaded and the shading is topped by solar cells. So are there better ways to use parking, and how can we work with industry and businesses to get that done, knowing that we're all members of the community, we all want greener spaces and cooler spaces?
Are it's simply introducing humans to nature, are they always going to be attacking it? I mean, we talk a lot here about overpopulation or the lack of population, how we need a population growth. And I'm always thinking we've got too many people as it is. When we put so many people in an area, is there ever a way to truly find balance with nature?
Yeah, I think a good example for that is Singapore. So Singapore, actually, if you look at it, it's kind of a garden city. And when I tell people, like, we could make Houston a garden city, sometimes they laugh at me or they scoff at that. But I think that we're going to have to. We're seeing increasing temperatures, increasing flooding. And one thing that people don't understand is hotter cities produce stronger flooding. So the two are not unlinked, right? So I think in terms of people, what's interesting is people tend to see Houston as a very new place. It's actually very ancient. People have been here for over 13,000 years. And in all of that time, they have been shepherding and stewarding and making choices about the land and how it's going to function, how it's going to work.
But there haven't been 4 million.
There haven't been 4 million people. And one of the things about this institute that we are, really wanting to take a look at with all of these partners is as we continue to create suburbs, and growth is going to happen, as the Texas Triangle develops, can we make more resilient, more sustainable, greener landscapes than we've done in the past? Because the landscapes we've made in the past are not sustainable. They're not water absorptive. They're hotter than they need to be. So I think it's how do you retrofit communities with nature that need it? And how do you build better communities out in the future? And I guess to your question, Ernie, like how can you even have a sustainable place with 4 million people?
Right.
I think if you think about it from a scaling perspective, every action that happens that adds 1 more inch of absorptiveness to your property, whether you're a private landowner, whether you're a business, house of worship, it is a cumulative effect. So one of the things we need to do is we need to make sure that we're deploying landscapes in the optimal way. That's not going to solve everything, but it'll get us a lot closer.
And it's interesting that you mentioned Singapore because there are a lot of parallels between Singapore in regards to humidity and the infrastructure. It's not a big walking city. It's more of a car city that we can look to Houston and say they have a lot of wall gardens and, that leveling out of city to city. We do have a couple of calls waiting in the queue. So let's go to Sully from Sharpstown. Sully, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment or question for Jaime?
When it comes to balanced city, there is no lower hanging fruit at all than getting rid of black roofs. Black shingles. It would be real simple to say you don't have to do anything right now, but when you replace your roof, replace it with white shingles. The black shingles that everybody has, probably half the roofs in Houston have black shingles. Those are 170 degrees in the summertime. I've measured it. I'm a real estate inspector. White shingles are maybe 105. Lowers the air, lowers the outside air. It's a win-win for everybody. There's no more black shingles.
Sully, thank you very much for that. I guess what the point of that is that there are small things we can all do that do make a big impact.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Sully. I'm actually looking at a picture here in the Hello Houston studio of downtown Houston. You can see some of the surfaces of the buildings. And they're gray and they're darker and all of that. So in a lot of ways, if you think past the nature and you think we live in a world of surfaces, what are those surfaces doing for us? Whether they're natural, whether they're engineered, like shingles, how are they either reflecting heat or absorbing heat for us, right? Or how are they absorbing water or not absorbing water and shedding it real quickly? So I think you're absolutely right. Some of the neighborhoods that I've worked in have very large apartment complexes, massive surfaces. And when they're dark, then that adds, like you said, to the heat load. It adds to those folks' bills, and it makes the surrounding area hotter. So no matter what you live in, whether you're in a suburb or a community here in Houston or an apartment, your building is adding to the heat and the water issues that we have, or it's part of the solution as well. So we should absolutely be looking at a scale of interventions.
Again, 713-440-8870. Let's go to Dan from Maryland. Dan, welcome from Meyerland.
I was like, wow, we got someone calling from Maryland?
Welcome, Dan.
You folks, I mean, really. My brother's in Maryland, but I'm in Meyerland.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about
Dan.
that. Meyerland.
We're so lucky. We are so blessed. We have so many more times the square footage of green space than New York City has in Central Park, right? There are untold numbers of parks. Even Memorial Park is like a third larger than Central Park. People don't stop and think about that. We have huge amounts of park space. We have huge amounts of green spaces, as the speaker mentioned. Wouldn't it be great if we could be more responsible in our use of those green spaces and put in the milkweed for the monarch butterfly and put in the bat houses that nobody really wants in their backyard, but wouldn't it be great if we had it for insect control? And Trees for Houston, oh my gosh, I can listen past every fundraiser, but when Trees for Houston comes on, that's when KUHF gets my money. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the topic. Very interesting. Really appreciate it.
Greg, thank you. Dan, thank you. And if you were watching, Jaime was agreeing with what you were saying, a head nodding here the whole time. Your thoughts?
I'm a huge fan of Barry Ward and Trees for Houston, the whole team over there. I've worked with them for over 2 decades. And you're absolutely right. You know, one of the things that is so incredible about Houston is not only it's the kind of the capital of human diversity. I have had the privilege of working with and coordinating what's called the City Nature Challenge team for Houston. This is an annual event where we go head-to-head with all these different cities in the U.S. and across the world to see who can document the most number of species. Well, for 5 years running, Houston was #1 in the nation.
Wow.
So we're also the biological capital in some ways of Texas. We have tons of species here. And so, you know, as we do our work to put more nature into communities, we're thinking about community broadly. Yes, it is the people, but there are over 10,000 identified species here. And why can't we serve all the community members? Because there's also another cycle that's really wonderful. Where people hear more bird calls, they're healthier. Where people come in contact with nature more regularly, they're healthier. We saw this during the pandemic. Yeah. A bunch where people needed to de-stress, where did they go? They didn't go to concrete places. They went out to parks and green spaces. And so in terms of our signature parks, Buffalo Bayou, Memorial Park, Herman Park, they've done such a great job of infusing those places with lots of nature. It's our local parks oftentimes that are kind of mow and blow. They're trees, but there's really nothing else for the habitat for other things. And so children in those neighborhoods don't get that sense of wonder, don't get that break from the bird calls as much as in other places. So how can we spread that out and make our city better?
713-440-8870. Greg from Kingwood is on the line. Greg, what's on your mind?
Hey, Ernie, interesting topic. Hey, I worked in white reflective roofs in the 90s, and we were putting borosilicate ceramics, the space shuttle tile stuff, into a white reflective coating. And there's 2 properties you have to deal with. There's reflectivity, but there's also another property called emissivity. And you have UVA, UVB. You can reflect the light off of roofs and everything and white coatings. But one of the most important things to really depress the heat island effect from an urban environment is you have to catch the heat energy, and the light energy is how you capture the heat energy. And the way to do it is with plants, rooftop gardens, and white reflective roofing is the way to do it. So whoever brought up about Singapore and the Garden City, you can't just have white reflective surfaces. You have to have a catcher's mitt, and you use a biological catcher's mitt, and it's plants. And talking about species and habitat, this is going to happen. It will be economical because it will be mandated initially by governments, but eventually humanity will see that this is the way you structure a urban environment. Anyway.
Greg, thank you very much for that. Greg has a lot of hope in humanity. How about you, Jaime?
I do. I have an 11-year-old son at home, and so our plan B is to love people and work with people. Yeah. And so we have to do this, and if we can do it anywhere, we can do it in Houston, right? And I think that, to this comment about using this very advanced space shuttle technology alongside this ancient technology, that's the world we want to live in. A lot of times I'll see renderings of future cities, just, try to make a rendering that. It's all glass and steel. There's really no nature in it. And I would say that that would be a very unhealthy place for human beings, knowing all the research we know about how central nature is to people's well-being. So we have to have it both.
Let's grab one more question real quick, or one more caller. Sophia from Southwest Houston. Sophia, you're on. What's up?
I would like to see more places like the Willow Waterhole Greenway as retention ponds. We get a lot of concrete retention ponds, but the Willow Waterhole Greenway is a beautiful place, and it's actually several big retention ponds that keep the area from flooding, and it has a lot of natural features, trees, animals, birds. It's an awesome place to be, and it retards the water and keeps the place from flooding.
Sophia, I'll tell you this, during the calls, we've gotten a lot of head shakes from Jaime. Yours was the only one that got a thumbs up from him. Jaime, your reaction?
Yeah, Willow Waterhole is like our family's go-to park. It's pretty close to where we live. And it's a perfect example of where you have public infrastructure in a public governmental entity, Harris County Flood Control, that was thinking ahead and designed really smartly. And I know that we're working with Harris County Flood Control right now, and they're coming up with some really innovative solutions so that you optimize the performance of that place. Not just about water capture, it's about life enhancement. And so if we have more places like that, we are going to have a what I say is a place that looks like a garden and responds like a fortress. It is going to be a place that we all want to live, and we'll continue to have talent moving here.
Jaime González is the director of the University of Houston's Institute for Ecological Resilience. Jaime, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston. We're going to have you back to discuss this Astrodome rendering that you did.
What a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Coming up, we are going to preview the Texans playoff game against the Steelers later today. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
From Discovery Green Conservancy, presenting Houston's outdoor ice skating rink, offering a wintertime experience for all, surrounded by public art and downtown views. Open through February 16th. More at discoverygreen.com.
Support comes from Blake Hillegeist Real Estate, independent commercial and residential real estate broker with over 30 years experience guiding clients through economic downturns, realty challenges, and everyday life situations. More at blakesellshouston.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
Tonight, the Houston Texans will face off against the Pittsburgh Steelers in a wild card round of the AFC playoffs, a match that, in addition to determining which of the two teams will advance in the playoffs, also has a lot of major narratives on the line. The Texans are seeking their first ever road playoff win in franchise history, and the Steelers are looking to continue their Monday Night Football streak. The Steelers haven't lost a home game on Monday Night Football since October 14th, 1991. Needless to say, the stakes are high. And joining us now to share his thoughts on tonight's big game and what's at stake for the Texans is Raheel Ramzanali, formerly of ESPN Radio and CityCast Houston. Raheel, welcome back to Hello Houston.
I'm so glad to be here. How are y'all? I want to go out in nature now after listening to that last segment.
Yes. And if you want to join the sports conversation, you can give us a call, 713-440-8870.
First, I got a fact check. Is Celeste right that the Steelers haven't lost a home game on Monday Night Football since 1991?
Yes, that is correct.
Insane.
That streak is historic, right? And you know, it's one of those things. You look at a road playoff game, Monday Night Football, it's very daunting for the Houston Texans. But the Houston Texans have this one thing that I don't know if those other teams did. They have a Super Bowl caliber defense in this current iteration. So, yeah, that streak is correct. But the Texans have the firepower to go in there and end both streaks.
Yeah, and I was going to say, so after their 0-3 start this season, the Texans have been one of the hottest teams that you're talking about in the league, and they've won 9 games in a row. I mean, that's not like the Steelers from 1991, but 9 games in a row. What was the turning point after that horrible start? And, you know, what has clicked for them on this streak headed into the playoffs, Raheel?
So there were a lot of changes going into the season. There was a new offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, Nick Haley. So the offense didn't look good to start the season. The defense didn't look good. They also played some tough opponents to start the year. And after that rough stretch, it just felt like, okay, this is not going to be the year, especially after last year. There was a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation for this season, and things didn't go right to start. They actually were 3-5, and then things started turning around. They get this big win against the Jags. They were trailing big time at home in the fourth quarter. They rally, they win, and then the streak starts. And now they have won 9 straight games, as you mentioned. And a lot of this goes to head coach D'Amico Ryans. You know, he does a great job of building culture, belief inside that locker room, and the players responded because it could have gone south, right? It could have been really, really bad. It could have been one of those seasons where you just start losing games and think, all right, who are the Texans going to draft in the first round with a top pick? And instead, they never gave up. And now they have one of the best defenses, and they have a chance to make a run for the Super Bowl, like a legit chance.
Mm-hmm. Following up on what Celeste asked you, and with that earlier fact we were talking about, I'm curious, studies shown or just even armchair research about the benefits, the challenge between skill that a team has and the psychology of their fear, of their understanding of the pressure. Do we see it impacting the game? Hearing these stats about the winning streak from 91, or the fact that you're on an upswing because of having so many winning games in a row, does that impact, or is it all at the end of the day going to come down to the skill and the talent of the players?
Okay, this is going to be a cop-out, but it's a little bit of both, all right? These streaks matter, right? But the team from 91 isn't playing tonight, right? But the reason that streak is so daunting and so scary for a lot of teams is because Pittsburgh is a tough place to play in. And when you go in there, you've got the terrible towels, and it's going to be loud, it's going to be hectic. We saw it last week. The Ravens had a chance to win that game, and they miss a kick that would have put them ahead. They made a lot of mistakes as well, because that game last week, it was the Ravens and Steelers at Pittsburgh, and all they had to do was just win. And the Ravens were in, but instead, look, that atmosphere was crazy, so they end up losing. So it does play out, but the personnel matters so much in this. The Texans, for the last 3 years, have done a good job of building a defense that is fast, that is physical, and that can execute D'Amico's vision. And what I mean by that is they're going to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, something that potential Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers doesn't like right now. He's an older quarterback. He doesn't like to get hit, and he says as much. He's like, I don't like getting hit. This defense will do that. And they've got some great cornerbacks who will make life really hard for the receivers for the Steelers. So it comes down to personnel, but Pittsburgh is a hard place to go and win.
Yeah, and that's what I was just going to ask you. Raheel, you keep mentioning how strong the Texans' defense is, but we have seen them struggle at times to score points on offense. Do you think the Texans will have trouble tonight outside? They're on the road and in temperatures expected to be in the 20s.
they're going to have some issues tonight. The Steelers defense is really good as well. They have a good front that will give CJ Stroud a lot of issues. Now, their secondary is not the best, and that's like the cornerbacks, the safeties, and you have a game changer in Nico Collins, who's a wide receiver for the Texans, that can really exploit that. And there's actually a lot of great receivers on this team that are healthy for the first time in a long time as well in the playoffs, which is going to be fantastic for CJ. With all that being said, this is going to be a low-scoring game. The total for tonight, and that's what Las Vegas puts out as the total points they anticipate to be scored, is 38.5. Now, in comparison, some of the other games from yesterday, 46.5, 48.5, one even went over 50. So they are anticipating this to be a low-scoring game, and that really does benefit the Houston Texans because that defense will keep this very physical and keep it very low. Now, if the Texans offense can just muster up 10 points, 13 points, they'll be in a great position for this game. Then we'll figure it out as we go through the playoffs because it's not going to be that easy in future games.
All right, so moving forward, Raheel, our executive producer, Jim Kovacic, had the Texans winning the Super Bowl on his 2026 bingo card. Woo. Are the Texans going all the way? Are they going to win the Super Bowl? Yes or no?
I don't know if they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I think they will make it to the Super Bowl. Yes.
Ooh.
I don't because, look, a lot of things change on the NFC. I don't know who the NFC representative is going to be. I think this is a Super Bowl team for sure. Boom. There's no Kansas City. There's no bugaboo in Patrick Mahomes.
And there's no more time. Yeah. Thank you, Raheel.
Raheel Ramzanali, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston. That brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for watching and listening to Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations. We're also going to be joined by Houston's newest at-large city council member, Alejandra Salinas. This is News 88.7. Go Texans.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from San Jacinto College Foundation, presenting Couture for a Cause, an evening of celebrating fashion and philanthropy.